Now, as I covered in my previous video on working with web design clients, we as web designers need to know more than just web design. We need broader skills that cover image editing, graphic design skills, and much more. Now, if you'd like to check out the previous video, you can check that out by taking a look at the link in the corner right now, or if you'd like to watch it after this video, I'll drop a link in the description too. Today, we'll be taking another fictitious client job specs and using those to create a custom landing page for their all-new veggie-based energy drink. The aim is to demonstrate the skills, tools, and considerations that this type of project actually requires. We'll be creating unique graphics using Affinity Photo, building a streamlined cloud-based landing page with Brizy Cloud, and tying it into MailerLite to manage future email marketing efforts. So if you're all ready to go behind the scenes and see how I would approach the various tasks, let's get stuck into creating our custom hero image header inside Affinity Photo. So this is the type of effect that we're going to create. Now for this, I'm going to be using Affinity Photo, but you could do this just as easily in Photoshop. You could even use some of the online editors. As long as you have the ability to make selections and masks, you can pretty much do this on any kind of tool. If you're an iPad user, you can absolutely do exactly the same as this using Affinity Photo on the iPad. I did it myself recently just for a test, and it is something that's pretty much super easy to do once you get your head around it. Okay, so with that being said, we need a couple of things. We need to create a blank document. We need to have, in this example, a piece of broccoli. Now, what I'm looking for is it doesn't really matter what you use for this kind of effect. As long as you've got something that has a shape that allows you to wrap the text inside and outside of it to create this extra dimension to it. So, when we've got the leaves popping out, that's a perfect place to do this kind of thing. So what I've got a stock image that I grabbed hold of from Envato Elements, and from there we're going to just take out the background. So the first thing we need to do is open that image up after we've created a blank document. So we're going to come to File and we're going to come to New. From there we're going to make sure we're on the Web tab, and we're going to scroll down, and I'm going to set this up to be 1920 by 1080. So we're going to create that document. Now, we're making the document slightly larger, and the reason for this will become apparent later on, but the simple answer is if we start with a larger document where we get edges that may not look absolutely perfect in our selection, when we shrink things down, a lot of that sort of contamination on the edges will be got rid of, and it just saves the time of spending a lot more time and effort creating perfect edges, especially with something that could be quite a complex shape. Okay, so now we've got this open, this blank document, we need to then open up the file that we want to drop into it. So I'm going to grab that file, I'm going to drop that in here, resize it, and then we can move on. Easiest way to do that is just come into File, and we're going to come down and choose Place. There's my broccoli image. We're going to click on that, click on Open, and then we're just simply going to click on our document. Now obviously that's a little too large, so I'm going to zoom out from there, and you can see we can resize this now. So we're just going to grab these grab handles, and we're going to resize while I'm holding the Alt key down to constrain the proportions. Okay, so I'm going to zoom back in and just make sure everything is positioned as I want. So I'm just going to resize this a little bit. There we go. Okay, so we're all done with that. So we've now created our first step. Okay, now we need to make a selection from this. Now, there's a lot of different ways you could do this, but Affinity Photo has a really simple way of working. So let's just zoom in so we can see what we're working with just a little bit better. Come over to the left-hand side, you can see we've got this selection brush tool. And we can click on that, and what we can do is now we can start clicking on the screen, and you can see that'll start to create a selection. So I'm going to undo that a second. I'm going to use the square brackets to make my brush larger, to make it's just easier to make the selection. Now there's two ways we can do this. We can select the item, or we can select the outside edge. We've also got options at the top to modify how this works. We've got add and we've got subtract. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the broccoli, and we're just going to start clicking over the broccoli. And you can see as I click and hold and move over the various different areas, our selection expands to pick up the different parts of the broccoli. We can zoom in, we can use the spacebar to move over to the hand so we can zoom in and see what we're doing, and we can use the brackets, the square brackets, to increase and decrease the brush size, and then we can keep on clicking until we get all the parts of the broccoli that we want. Now don't worry if you have areas that you miss out, like this little white section that's not selected. We'll deal with that in a moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around making sure that I pick up all the broccoli, adjusting my brush size until I've got everything that I want. So I'm going to quickly speed up the video from this point, make that selection, and I'll come back and show you how we can refine things. So there's the initial selection. As you can see, we still have a couple of areas that we need to refine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in. You can use the hand to move over to where we want. And we need to deal with this little section. So we're going to change this over to subtract. We're going to click inside there, and you see that'll pick it up. Now I'm going to simply go ahead, move around my image, and just use the same technique to pick up any areas that we've kind of missed out, just to make sure that we get an awesome selection. Again, increasing or decreasing the size of the brush as I see fit and as I need to make sure that everything is picked up. Okay, that looks pretty good. We've got our initial selection all done. Now what we can do if we want to is jump over and refine this even more so. So we can click to choose refine, and you can see that now opens up a new dialog box and also puts this red overlay, which denotes there's a mask being applied, and the red area is masked out. Anything you see in full color is going to be areas that you will see that's not being affected by the mask. Now we have a couple of different options. We can choose different types of preview, so we can switch between the overview, which is what you can see now with this red overlay. We can choose a black matte, which will show us black exactly where the area that's going to be matted out or masked out. We can do the same in reverse. We can say a white matte. We can also come in down and choose black and white, so we can just see the edges. So if we zoom in, you can see any of the areas that don't look particularly perfect, and then you could, if you wanted to, refine those from there. And finally, we have transparent, which will do exactly as the name suggests. So if you're working with multiple layers, the transparency would let you see whatever's underneath it. Let's switch this back over into overlay. And now we can, if we want to, use various different techniques inside here to adjust and refine this. And you can switch back and forth between these previews at any point to see exactly what's happening in various different overlay modes or preview modes. So the border width, if we increase that, you can see we get a visible notification of how much border area is going to be affected. So we can reduce that, take that down to a small amount. If we want to refine this, we want to force Affinity Photo to recheck the area and be a little bit more, sort of thorough with it, go over it a second time, we can simply paint over the area we wanted to recheck, click and let go, and that will then attempt to refine the area. Now, it doesn't always do a perfect job. This is one of those things that you're going to have to take your time to see how it all works and what gives you the best results. But like I say, the border width will give you the edge border. The smooth will kind of just soften those edges a little bit. It'll smooth things out towards the edge. And if we come back out and we switch this over to, for example, black and white, we can probably see a little bit better. So if we adjust the border width, we can see how this affects that matte. If we take that back out, if we adjust the smoothing, we'll see this kind of just puts a blur around the edge, and for a lot of cases that's not going to be a great way of working unless you've got a very defined edge. So we're going to take that right the way back down. Feather kind of softens both sides, so it feathers the outside and the inside of the selected edge, as opposed to smooth, which just kind of blurs it all off. And then you've got your ramp, which affects the actual edge of the selection kind of thing, edge of the mask, so you can adjust that using those different tools. So we're going to set these back to roughly their defaults, so we can see exactly where we were. Then you've got the adjustment brush. So the matte is going to affect the matte, in other words, the outside and the inside of the matte itself, the selection itself. The foreground is going to tell it what is needing to be in focus, what is the thing you want to focus on. So if we can paint over this, and you see that now starts to get a little bit better on the edges. Now obviously that goes over the edge and gives you an effect you don't want, so we'll undo that. So this allows you to sort of just refine by kind of painting in any areas that are glaringly obvious that you want selected. So you can take your time and refine your mask using this kind of technique, depending upon the type of mask that you're creating. So there's a lot of things you can do with this. Your background will do the opposite. You just paint on areas that are intended to be background and something you want to be part of the masked area. And feather is just, like I say, feathers the edge kind of thing. Then you can choose how you want to output this. And we're going to choose between selection, mask, new layer with mask. So you can go through, refine what you want. Once you're happy with that and you've got where you want it to be, then you can apply it either as a selection or as a mask, however you want to do it. Now, getting your head around how masks and selections work, whether you're using Affinity Photo, Photoshop, or any other kind of pixel editing tool, these are key skills that really do up your game in what you can do. And if you want to learn more about this kind of technique, let me know in the comment section below. And also tell me what kind of tool you're using, whether you're using Affinity Photo, whether you're using Photoshop, an online tool, like Pixlr E, for example, or you may be even using an iPad and using tools like Affinity Photo on the iPad. Let me know the tools you're using and if you'd like to see more detailed content on how to create masks and selections and all those kinds of useful things. Okay, so we've gone ahead and refined this a little bit. Now I can choose what I want to output it as. Now I'm going to say I want to output this as a mask. So I'm going to click on mask, click apply, and now we get a masked area in the layers panel. We've got a new mask inside there. Now obviously we can't really see much what's going on because currently we have a white background, which is where we started off. The overall image is on a white background. So let's just zoom out and let's change that. Let's put a gradient background in this so we can start to see how this is going to look when we actually output it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn off these two layers, and we can do that on the layers panel by clicking on these little check boxes on the right hand side. So now we've disabled anything on there. We're going to create a new layer. You're going to come down and click on new layer. We're going to position that underneath. So that's, bear with me. So that's outside there. So we've got that underneath. All we're going to do now is come over to the gradient tool or press G on the keyboard. I'm going to click on that. We're going to draw a gradient from the bottom left to the top right. And you can see when we do that, it picks up the default gradient, which is going to be white through to a pale gray. We don't want that. We want to use these green colors. Now, I've already created a color palette from the image itself, and this is a pretty cool feature you can have inside Affinity Photo. Let me just quickly show you how that works. Come up to the swatches panel and click on this little flare in the top right hand corner. Now you can't see all this unfortunately, but you can see what we need, which is, it says create palette from image. Now click on that and you can see it says select image. So we're going to click on there. We're going to choose the image that we want to use, which in this example is our broccoli image. Click open. Let that open up and you can see that now pulls in the option to grab colors from within that particular image. We can increase the number of colors we want to use. So you can see you can go up to a crazy amount of colors and that will pick out shades and all those kinds of things. But we want to keep this really simple and just maybe take it to something like 12. We could then say preview. That will show us all the colors inside there. And you can see I've already done this in my little color panel. And then once you're happy with that, you can say what's your location is going to be application, document, or currently selected palette. Application will make it something that's available every time you open up Affinity Photo. Document, every time you open the document, or currently selected palette. If you have multiple palettes, it'll only apply to that particular one. Now I'm not going to do this because I've already done it. I just wanted to show you because I think this is an incredibly useful tool inside Affinity Photo. So let's just cancel back out of that and continue where we were. Okay, so back to creating our gradient. Let's just drag that gradient up again. So we start working with it. And you'll see we've got two little circles, one in the top, one in the bottom corner. This is where we can choose the colors we want to work with. This is a super easy way of working with this example. Now, I'm not going to go into details about how gradients work and so on inside Affinity Photo. Just want to show you how we're going to use it in this particular use case. What we're going to do, select the top right. We're going to click on the green color we want to use there, and that immediately applies that. Click on the bottom left and we're going to click on the darker color and you can see we now have a gradient from that darker color through to the light color. You can possibly just about see this little line in the middle of our gradient bar. This allows us to adjust the gradient midpoint. So we can drag that up, we can drag it down. And hopefully what you can see is it adjusts the position of the midpoint in the gradient. So if we take it up to the right hand side, you can see we get a lot more of that darker green shade, more of the appley green in the top right. Whereas if we do it the opposite way, we now reduce the amount of darker green to more of the appley green kind of color. Now drop that back into the center and it snaps nicely in there for me. So now we've created the gradient background. Let's enable our other layers. Now we click back on the broccoli layer and unfortunately you can see we've still got the white background even though we created a mask. If we switch the mask on, that doesn't really do what we want it to do. That's because the mask isn't currently associated with the particular layer. And there's lots of ways you can create masks. This is just one example. But what we can do is if you want to apply that, we can simply drag that underneath and push it over to the right-hand side. That will then group it into the overall image that we've got, which is part of the broccoli. Now you can see the mask is automatically applied. I can enable or disable that by using the little checkbox. But we now have our gradient, we've got our broccoli inside there, and our mask applied to it. So we can click back onto our broccoli layer, and because this is associated with the mask and they're linked to each other, if I want to change the size of this, so we just choose our selection tool and we just adjust the size of this, and I'm going to hold the control or command key down to adjust all of the aspects. We're retaining that aspect ratio. You can see that when we shrink this down a little bit, that reduces the edge we have around it. And like I say, if you want to spend more time on your mask, you can do just that. But the trick of working on a much larger image, making your selection, your mask, doing all those kinds, and then shrinking things down is a quick and easy way of just tidying up those edges without going to a ton of effort. Now, I don't mind this little bit of slight haloing around there, because once we apply the drop shadow to this, it's kind of going to give it a nice little bit of separation. So we've got our broccoli in place. We've got our mask set up. So the next thing we want to do is drop in the text. Once you dropped in the text, then we can take a look at applying another mask and then kind of allowing those leaves to pop through. If we just take a look back at the original image, you'll see what I'm talking about. So you can see if we zoom in a little bit, it's still got that little bit of a white halo. The drop shadow kind of throws your eye from that anyway. And then we've just used masks to allow us to easily see the bits and pieces of the broccoli that we want. So we need to go and do that. So let's come back over to our image that we're working with. Let's drop a text layer in there. So we're going to simply come over, click on our text, making sure that you choose the artistic text, not the text frame option. So we're going to click, and you can see that puts a tiny little cursor in there. Let's bump that up to a nice size just to see what we're doing. Put it to 144 to start off with, and we'll just type in broccoli. So there's our text. We can easily resize that now to get what we want. The next thing we need to do is change the font to a much better, more broad, sort of thicker font, and then also change the color. So changing the color is super easy. We just need to double click and select all of our text, come to the color chip for the font color at the top, and we're simply going to grab that and select that to be white. There we go. Next thing I'm going to do, like I say, is change the font over to something a little bit bolder. To do that, all we need to do is come up to our context bar at the top. You can see currently it's set to Arial. Click on there and we can now scroll through and find something that we like. So Bebus is a good one, I like that, and also Bebus New. So it's up to you what you want to use. So I'm going to select, let's go for Bebus. I'm going to click on that, and that's now changed the font over. So we're going to click outside, select our selection tool, and we're just going to resize this so it's kind of in context to the size of the broccoli. Okay, so now we just want to position this to get it looking good, knowing that we're going to sort of take parts of this out. So it still needs to be evident what the word is, but we need to just give us space to allow us to sort of fine tune and tweak and apply this masking and so on to this. So there's our text in place, our broccoli position behind it. So the next thing we want to do now is apply a mask to the text to be able to hide the bits and allow the leaves to show through. The first thing we need to do is create a mask now on our text layer. So making sure that the text layer is active. You can see it's highlighted in blue. We're going to come down to the bottom of the layers panel, and you can see we've got mask layer. I'm going to click on that. That's going to create a blank mask for us. You can see that's automatically indented because it's now associated with that broccoli layer. If we open up the broccoli image itself with the mask intact, we can actually use a very nice simple way of creating an initial selection that we can use to hide parts of this broccoli text. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hold the control or the command key down on the Mac, and I'm going to click on the mask layer. And you can see that now recreates the selection that's part of the mask layer that we set up with the broccoli. Click back on our mask for our broccoli text, and now what we can do is we can come over to our paintbrush, choosing either black or white depending upon what you want to do. So if you want to hide or show, so for example, white will show everything, black will hide. What we can do now is making sure we've got this mask selection. You can see, let's just zoom in a little bit. It will show us exactly what will be happening with the mask itself. Now I'm pressing nothing on the keyboard at the moment. I simply have the paintbrush selected. I've got black as my foreground color, and I've got the mask layer active. So I know exactly what's going to happen. So now what I can do is I can paint without worrying about going outside the lines, because that mask is in action, and we've also got this selection in action, which means that anything outside the selection, regardless of being masked, will not be touched. So we can do the same thing here. We can easily come over. You can see I'm just painting away, not worrying about the edges because we've got those selected and masked. So a super simple way of working and speeding up the whole process of doing something like this. We can use the keyboard shortcuts. Like I say, I've got the control or command key and using the scroll wheel on the mouse to zoom in and out. hold the space bar down to change over to the hand, and I can move things over. So using this kind of combination, I can easily just zoom in and out and see exactly what I'm doing. So I could easily come over now and start painting these things out. So let's just say I wanted to do this kind of effect. Well, there we go. We now have that going over the L of broccoli. Now, obviously, I can't use it in conjunction with this area because this is not selected in the way that I want it to be. So we'd have to do this in a slightly different way. Now, you can go and create another mask if you wanted to, or you could create a selection. You can create a lot of different ways of doing this. But because we're not too worried about it, what I can do is I can simply create a much smaller brush, zoom right in, and I'm going to come back over to my broccoli layer and activate that, and then I'm going to drop the opacity down a little bit so I can see exactly what's underneath. Come back and make sure that the mask layer is selected and only the mask layer. And then what I can do is I can paint this out. So we're creating that mask, and the beauty of a mask is, let me just quickly show you. Let's just say I got too far and I go, oh, I'm going to have to start all over again. Well, I don't. All I need to do is just switch over to white as my foreground color, and I can paint that mask back in. And this is where the beauty and the power of masks really comes into play. You are simply creating that overlaid mask effect, and nothing is destructive. Nothing is going to affect the actual pixels themselves. It's all totally non-destructive. So taking my time, making sure that I've got a good brush that doesn't have too soft an edge, I can just come in and I can just fine tune this to get exactly what I want by just taking a little bit of time. Now, obviously, I don't have huge amounts of time on here to spend, but you can see that I can very quickly come over and I can just tidy this up, get exactly what I want with this particular letter. I can use the square brackets to zoom in and zoom out on my brush, or actually, sorry, to make the brush smaller or larger. So we're just going to make that a bit smaller, come around the edges, and there we go. So I'm just going to quickly do this, and like I say, this is quick. I would probably spend a lot more time, probably make selections and all those kinds of things. But let's just say that looks pretty good. You can see I've gone a little bit outside there, so I can quickly flick those back over, paint that mask edge back in to get a nice tidy edge. Then I come back over to my broccoli layer, and I can just set that to 100%. If I've missed anything out, come down to my mask layer, and I can just quickly paint those in or paint those out, depending upon whether I'm using black or white. So super simple to do. Takes a little bit of time, but with a little bit of time and effort, you can quickly create great looking effects like this that you can use on your site. So let's just zoom back out and come back out a little bit, and we'll just press Control or Command D to deselect everything. And you can see now we have these letters going in and out of the various different parts. So the final thing we want to do is just apply a drop shadow effect to the broccoli itself to give it an extra little bit of a dimension, which I kind of think looks pretty cool. Okay, so let's just grab these layers. I'm going to close those up. We're going to use the two main layers. We're going to leave the background as it is because that's only being used as a visual representation of how it's going to look when we create the page inside our page builder. Let's just move this up a little bit so we have a bit of space to create the drop shadow effect. Now to do this is very, very easy. We'll come back over and expand out our broccoli and the mask area, making sure that we've got the photograph, the broccoli image selected and not the mask layer. With that selected, we're going to come down and click on the effects layer option. I'm going to click on there, and we're going to create an outer shadow. You can see once I do that, that immediately picks up the effects. Now we can adjust this very easily. We can adjust the blend mode that's going to be used. You can adjust the intensity, the radius. You can see how soft it's all going to look. So if we have a very small radius, we get a very harsh shadow. We want to soften that off nicely. The offset is the distance away from the object. So we want that to be quite a way away because we want to look like it's really floating off the page. Then the intensity is how strong that shadow is. And you can see as we increase the intensity, we also get rid of a lot of the softness of the edges. We want to keep that intensity quite low because I want a nice soft effect down the bottom. So the offset, we're going to push that a little further away. Color, obviously as the name suggests, you can change the color. Then the angle is the angle of the shadow itself. And you can see as I move that around, it changes. We want that down to about 315. You can change the multiply, like I say, the blend mode, but what we want to do is just drop the opacity of this right the way down just so we get this really subtle shadow effect to give it a sense of dimension. With that done, we can close that down and we've done everything we want. So I'm going to reposition this back now in the middle to make sure that everything has space and we're going to move that down. There we go. So we've got plenty of space around there now to work with everything. That's our image. So what we're going to do now is we're going to save that. So you can go to File, and we're going to just choose Save As. From there, we're just going to call this Broccoli Lesson 1, for example. And we'll say Save. Okay, let's just disable this background. And now what we can do is we can just crop if we want to, just to make sure we don't have such a big image. So we'll come in, grab our crop tool. We're going to crop this down. Now the top is perfectly fine. The sides are fine because there's nothing to worry about grabbing on there. What we need to be incredibly careful of is the bottom section where the shadow is. So we're going to bring that up. We're going to give it plenty of space because the last thing we're going to do is crop the shadow and end up with a hard line. So with that all done, we're going to say, go back to our selection tool, disable the background, and then we're going to come up to File, and we're going to just choose Save As. And come down to Export. So say Export, and from there we can now choose what format we want to output. We're going to choose PNG. You can see it tells us the size that we've got on there, and we can adjust the size if we want to. We can do whatever we want inside here. PNG or PNG 8-bit dithered. We want PNG because we want that full level of transparency. You've got more options if you want to work with those, but to be honest, most of these things we don't really need to worry about. I'm going to click on Export. From there, we're just going to change the name of this to Broccoli Header. Put a space in between and a dash, and we'll say Save. So that's now saved that out. Let's take a quick look at the file size on that. So that works out at 626 kilobytes. That's a pretty big file, so we need to deal with that. I'm going to show you a quick tool that's online that should save us a fair amount of file size on this. Let me just quickly load up a browser and show you how good this is. A TinyPNG is one of those little sites that really is very useful. You've got tinypng.com and tinyjpeg.com. They're basically the same site. They do the same thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag that Broccoli header up, let that upload, and you can see there's our starting point, 640.4 kilobytes. We've now stripped off 63%, taking it down to 236 kilobytes. Now that's still fairly large, but we are dealing with a big image that has multiple levels of transparency inside there. So I think it's a nice balance between the file size, the quality of the image, and what we're trying to achieve. Obviously, it's up to you how you want to work. You could be working with smaller images. You might not want to use transparency, at which point you could replace that with the gradient. There's lots of different ways you work around, but I think if this is your hero image and it's an important image, I think that's a fairly decent compromise file size wise. So once that's done, all we need to do is just say download that, and then we've got our new version downloaded, ready to start working with our landing page. Now that wraps up this section on using Affinity Photo. It's been quite a big section in this video, but to be honest, we've also covered quite a few really advanced topics. Masking isn't something that is straight out of the box an easy thing to get your head around, so understanding masking is very powerful, but also takes a little bit of explanation. Hopefully you've enjoyed this particular section of the video, but like I said earlier on, let me know in the comment section below if you'd like to see more videos doing this kind of thing, covering Affinity Photo, Photoshop, and so on. Working with tools like this to create images like this, let me know. Now before we take a look at the how, let's take a look at the why I'm using Brizy Cloud as opposed to something like maybe Elementor, Elementor Pro, self-hosting and those kinds of things. Couple of reasons. First and most importantly is everything is included in Brizy Cloud. Your hosting is included, the page build is included. You don't even need to worry about updates and so on. It's all completely and utterly managed on your Brizy Cloud account. Secondly, the cost that's involved with it. If you have something really simple, you could use the free option, which is, free. And the only thing you're kind of missing out on are some of the integrations. So if you wanted to use a form, you'd have to insert the code taken from somewhere else. You could have to use that from your email service provider. For example, you could be using MailerLite or you could be using MailChimp, where you could drop in the block of code for that. So it's a workaround, but it's still perfectly doable. Secondly, hosting options all included. Removes the reliance upon something like WordPress. Now this WordPress is great. You know I love WordPress, but there's one inherent problem. You constantly have to update it. Plugins update, WordPress core updates, all those kinds of things. That can be a bit of a nightmare if all you want to do is manage simple sites or maybe landing pages and so on. So Brizy Cloud gives you great options. Even the $49 gives you 3 hosted domains. If you go for the $99 one, then you have unlimited. That in itself is an amazing offer, and something that is a bit of a game changer in my opinion, something that I've been using more and more myself lately as I've been delving into this a little deeper. So, the other thing, on the final thing I think is really important, you have one simple unified control panel for either all of yours and or all of your clients' websites and sales funnels, landing pages, and so on. So this is something that I think just separates it from using self-hosted options. But if you want to go the self-hosted route, by all means do. And if you'd like to see me cover this same kind of technique, but use something like Elementor and Elementor Pro alongside a self-hosted version with WordPress, drop a comment in the comment section below, and I'll take a look at creating that if enough people are interested in that way of working. That being said, we are going to take a look at Brizy Cloud. Now, there's a couple of things I also want to bring your attention to. We've got 4 ways to get online. We can use a custom domain. We can use a dedicated subdomain. We can server sync, so we could host this ourselves any way we wanted to and have that linked through to our Brizy Cloud account. And when we make changes to our Brizy Cloud pages, that will be pushed over to our actual self-hosted site. So we'll server sync, we'll push all those updates over to our hosted account. And the fourth and final option is exporting as HTML. If all you want to do is create a simple landing page and then not have to worry about it afterwards, but you want to self-host it, you could export that HTML and then host it wherever you want under whatever domain you want to, and then you have full management over that with no reliance upon Brizy Cloud whatsoever. So all of your options should be covered by choosing one of these 4 different ways of working. Now there's one more thing, or basically 3 more things I want to draw your attention to, which are in the works, and why again I think using Brizy Cloud is something that can be really useful to you, either for yourself or your freelance business working with clients. Collaboration, analytics and tracking, and sales funnels. If you're creating landing pages for your clients or for yourself, sales funnels is going to be something that you really want, alongside that ability to have analytics and track everything that you're doing with the site. Collaboration is something that's very useful if you are working inside a team. You could be working remotely with other individuals. You could have a small agency. There might be a couple of you inside your own business. Lots of different reasons why collaboration could be useful. But for me, analytics and tracking and sales funnels is going to take Brizy to another level. So I've logged into my Brizy Pro account and I've logged into my cloud section, and you can see this is the cloud dashboard. It's very simple to work with, and I'm not going to go over it in any detail because I think it's very self-explanatory. But again, if you'd like me to cover Brizy Cloud in absolute detail to show you how all of it works, how everything is set up, let me know in that comment section below and I'll take a look at creating some unique content on this cloud-based version of Brizy. But for now, all I want to do is create a new project. So this is going to be that simple landing page. We've created the header graphic now inside Affinity Photos, so we've got the key thing done there. So we can use that to start building this, and then we'll take a look at some of the other graphics we'll need as we go through the process of building this out as if we were working with a client. So let's create our project, and you can see now we've got website and landing page, or pop-up and alert. We're going to create a website and landing page. We can now name this project, so we're just going to call this Veggie Smoothie. And that's that named. We can now go through and start editing the project. So we're going to click on Edit Project. Now, one of the reasons why I would suggest getting the Pro version, even if it's just a personal license over the free version, is because you'll have access to all the Pro template files and all the Pro features, widgets, and everything that goes with it. For the very small cost of entry, that is a ton of extra functionality that can really help speed up the whole process of working, creating your landing pages and your simple websites. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is create our hero image at the top, our hero section. So we're going to click to start. I'm not going to take any of the templates. We're going to take a look at some of those a little later and pull in ones that I think are going to be a good starting point. And like I say, this is less of a tutorial on the design of everything, more a tutorial of how I would take and cherry pick various different pieces, integrate everything together, edit it to get it to where I want it to be, and then link it through to our mail service provider, which in this instance is MailerLite. So let's create our first block section. So this is where our hero image is going to be placed. So the first thing we're going to do is upload that hero image. So we're going to come over to the left hand side, add an element, and we're going to grab an image. We're going to drop an image widget inside there. Once we've done that, now we can scroll down a little bit, and there's all the options for this specific widget. So what we can do is we can click on the very first option, which is the image. And this is where we can choose to upload or choose the image we want to work with. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on this little cloud upload icon. And from there, we're going to grab the image we're going to be working with. So we've already output this and we've compressed it and done all those things that we need. So I'm going to upload that. That's going to take a few seconds to upload because it is a larger image. It'll be processed in the background by Brizy Cloud, and then we can come back and we can fine tune and tweak to make sure everything looks the way we want it to, sized, scaled, and so on. Now let's just set some of the parameters that we need for this. So we're going to click on the image widget to make sure it's active. We're going to click on the little settings icon, and from there we can now configure various different things. The size is 100%, but the height is set to 162%. We're going to change that now to 100. And you can see that now resizes and scales everything the way we want. It's also updated and refreshed, and we now have the nice full high resolution version of this. So we've got our image in place. Perfectly fine with this being inside a boxed area. We don't want this to run full width. We're quite happy with that, so we can make sure that the scaling is controlled. Now obviously we need to put that gradient that we used as the temporary backdrop as part of creating this inside Affinity Photo. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go and grab the colors that we want, and we're going to assign those to our site color palette. Coming back over into Affinity Photo, you can see our color palette is still open. All I need to do is choose the colors that I want to use for our heading and then apply those into our design. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click on this first color chip and we're going to say Edit Fill. From there, that's going to bring up the color wheel. Now, unfortunately, you can't see the hexadecimal values inside this particular view. All we're going to do, where it says HSL color wheel, we're going to change that to RGB sliders or hex sliders. So we're going to click on hex sliders for this example, and you can see there's our hex code. All we need to do is copy that from there. We can jump back over into our Brizy Cloud, and from there we can now come over into our styling option. Now at the moment this is using the overpass styling. We can override any of these colors and these will become global colors, so we can then use those anywhere in our design to change and apply to anything, buttons, all those kinds of things. So what we're going to do is we're going to change first of all this purple color. So I'm going to click on that and we're going to just paste in the hexadecimal value for our green inside there. That's now picked that up. Now obviously if we had widgets that were using these color options, they would change if we change that purple to this green. So bear that in mind when you're changing these colors. I'm going to hop back over into Affinity Photo again, and we're going to select the second color, edit that fill, grab that hexadecimal value from there, copy that over, and then we're going to go back into Brizy Cloud and we're going to choose this color here, and we're going to just change this over to that color value. We now have those two greens applied, and obviously we can change any of these other ones. And if you were working with a client with a specific color palette in mind, you could save those color palettes out and apply those colors inside here, and then you could reference those throughout your design. It's a great way of being able to globally change various different things inside Brizy itself. So I'm going to close that down. I'm going to come back over now to our top section. Now we don't want to select the image, we want to select the actual container itself, the section container. So we're going to click in this top right hand corner, click on there, and we're going to come over to the colors option. Click on colors and you can see now we can choose an overlay, we can choose borders, we can do what we want on there. So we want to change this from being a solid to a gradient. Click on gradient, you can see that immediately pulls up what it considers to be the default colors. What we're going to do though is change those. So the first little color circle is where we can set the first initial color. So we'll choose this darker green. Click on the second and then we'll choose our lighter green. There's our gradient. Now we can just change the angle of that if we want to. So we set that to 210 degrees. You can see that now gives us the darker corners. And if you wanted to, you can just choose any kind of degree value you want. What I would like to see here though is the ability to easily just use a slider range. So we can go from 0 to 360 and visually change this, which is kind of something that most of what Brizy works like has those kind of great ways of working. So I'd love to see that inside here, as opposed to trying to have to figure out what degree angle you want for any particular layout, any particular style with using a gradient. That being said, nothing too complex. So there's our first section inside our header. So that's our first part all done. So the next thing we want to do is just put a call to action at the top of the page. Like I say, this isn't a tutorial on how to build effective landing pages and sales funnels, just showing you how to use the tools, then you can integrate those into your workflow. So adding forms is super easy. We're going to come to the add element. We're going to search form. I'm going to drag and drop that then underneath. And you can see this inserts a standard basic form. All we need to do is get rid of the elements that we don't want. So we just bin off these two. And we're going to set this first section. We're going to come into edit that, and we'll set that to be 80% or 75% will do. And we put the button, do the same thing again on there. We'll set that to 25%. And once we do, it'll jump up to the top section. There we go. So we dropped in the form. Now let's go and drag in a text block, drop that above there. And now what we can do is we can set this to be the title and telling people exactly what we want them to do. You can come up and we can change any typography. So we'll select that and we'll just change this from paragraph. We'll set this to be heading 2 and we'll change the color on that. So we'll change that from gray and we'll set that to be white. Change the alignment to centered, and now we can drop in the message that we want. There's our heading in there, and because we're using the styling that's being controlled via the style section, if we change this over, it would change any of the text over as well. So that's good to know that we can make changes globally by doing just this. Now, I'm not going to worry too much about setting the action up for this because I'm going to show you that once we've configured a few other things on here, and I'll show you the first one then, and you can just recreate this as you move down. Okay, so we've created our own custom heading section at the top. We've dropped in our call to action underneath that. Now we're going to take a look at using some of the template blocks to speed up the development process. So what we're going to do is click to open this up. Because we've got the Pro version, we have access to all of the templates, whether that's from Kit 1 or from Kit 2, which is the more up-to-date, refreshed, and just a little bit brighter layout. We can switch between light and dark modes of all of those different templates, and we can filter those out based upon the different types of information. So the call to action, for example, you can see we can take a look there and use any of the call to actions from there. However, what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the features because we're telling someone we want them to do something. We're going to extol the virtues of what this particular product or range of products actually offers. So what we're going to do is take a look at the different options we have available. Because we have a nice big image at the top, I think we're going to go for this nice text, clean text area. You can see this allows us to change text on there. We can pull up any other kind of call to actions. We can edit any of this info. We can come into these icons, for example. We can click on those and we can use the power of our custom designs, choosing those colors. So for example, if we click on the color option, we can choose between the icon, the backy kind of green. That's pretty cool. We can do the same thing for the next one. We can just simply come in, choose the color, switch to background, change that to the appley green. So I'm going to do that for the rest of those. With those done, we can turn our attention to the subheading section and we can drop that info in there. Now I wanted to just increase the spacing between the top section, so I can just simply come over to this gap area. You can see we click, we can drag that down, and we can just visually adjust those. Obviously, if we wanted to type those values in, we can do that directly inside the panel by using this right option, and then we can go into the settings and come over into the more settings, and then it's all our padding and margins and so on all set and editable of this particular smoothie. Let's come back in and choose a different type of block. This again, let's just filter these down. So I'm going to come to the features again, and I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to grab this one because I want to use a nice strong image of vegetables, colorful vegetables, to really draw attention. So we eye through it in a kind of nice logical fashion. So this is probably where I would extol the virtues of this particular product. And we're going to drop in a nice image into this left-hand section. And to do that, for this particular column, and what we're going to do is we're going to change the background image on there. We want visually on your image itself. So you can say, well, there's the strongest part of the image is kind of right but there. That's where I want the focal part to be. This is a really simple down. It's just such a nice, simple, clean interface to work with. Okay, so we've draws the attention to it because it's nice and visual. Next up, we're going to come down and add another block in. And what we're going to do is we're going to drop in some social proof. One of the things that you want on your landing page is real testimonials, real quotes from people that are extolling the virtues of your site, of really sort of adding some interest to that kind of thing. So we're going to take a look at, you have smaller and a larger selection of testimonials. For this example though, we're going to keep this really, we don't want this A, B and B, we would change all this, but I think it's a nice, large, real grabbing separate because it just gives that visual hierarchy between these various different parts. Next up, we're going to just drop in some more information, we're going to grab another one of these features because we want to really draw attention and really hammer home what it is that we're doing and why this is such a good product and people want to buy it. So what we're looking for is somewhere that I can drop in an actual product shot image, and this is going to be a visual mock-up. So I think something like this would work quite nicely. We'll replace the phone, obviously. We'll click on that to add that into there. That now drops that underneath, and again we can simply come into here, click, we can change the background. So we can just change the background color, and we'll choose this gray. We'll make that a little lighter. Now obviously you don't have to use gray. You could take a really pale green to emphasize that green color. You know, there's any number of things that you could do to draw attention. And again, we're going to just make the gap at the top. We're going to increase these just to give us more breathing space. So 125 is what we used in the previous one. So we can do the same here. 125 pixels. There we go. That's close enough. There we go. Okay, so we want to change the color on these as well. So we're going to change the color to our nice green color. Oh, wrong one. That should be the background. And we'll do the same on the one below. So we'll edit that, background, set that to a green color. So we're now having that consistency across the board. So the next thing we need to do is drop in the image we want in there. So we'll come back to this section in a moment, which we're the final section in, which is going to be the pricing information. Then we'll go and take a look at how we can take a mock-up and make something that could be more unique to drop into here. So let's come down and add one more section. This time we want the pricing options. So we're going to just take something really clean and simple. We'll say this one looks quite nice. We'll just click on that one and we'll say there's multiple different options they can choose from. Again, we can come in and we can just change the button color to make sure that everything's consistent with our color. And obviously, like I say, you will spend more time tweaking this. And we're going to come back to this design in a moment anyway. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is create that mock-up for the fruit bottle that's going to have the smoothie or the vegetable smoothie that we're going to be doing. So I'm going to be using Envato Elements again, and you can find this kind of thing online for free if you want to. I just tend to find that Envato Elements just has tons of options and makes my life a lot easier. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this isolated fruit juice mock-up. If we click on that, you can see this is the kind of thing we've got. So we can change the color, we could change the label, and so on. Now these are geared to being used with Photoshop, so you may find there are a couple of little weird discrepancies if you open them up with Affinity Photo. Even though it supports smart objects and smart layers, there is still some differences between how Photoshop works and how that works. If you want to check out how to use the smart layers and the smart objects, I'll put a link in the description below so you can take a look at the video I did on that very recently. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly just open these up inside Affinity Photo, make the edits and so on, change the color, and then I'm going to save that out, compress it like I did with the first one with a header when we mock that up, and then we're ready to put that into the product section. Okay, we're back into our design now, and what we're going to do is change this image over for our mock-up of our fruit bottle or our broccoli juice bottle. Sounds delicious. Okay, so there's our mock-up. We're going to click on open on there. And there we go. There's our mock-up. So what we need to do now is just adjust the size on this to make sure that everything fits the way we want it to. To do that, we're going to switch over to the settings for this particular section. And what we're going to do is we're going to adjust the height on there to set that to 100%. That now gives us plenty of space at the top, gives us the drop shadow underneath. Obviously, you may want to close up your spacing a little bit to compensate for these kinds of changes. And we're going to do just that. The top's okay, the bottom is a little bit tighter now. So we've created basics of our page. We need a couple more things though. Let's just drop in some more call to actions. Let's use this section for a second call to action. So let's just say we want to get a daily boost, sign up below. Let's just drop that onto the next line like so. So what we can do now is we can simply come underneath there, come back into our widget section, and we're going to search for form, drag and drop that underneath there. There's our form. We can do the same thing again. We could just get rid of those elements that we don't want, just so we have a really nice, clean, simple way of setting this up. If you want to change your fonts inside here, you could easily do that. So we'll set that to overpass, and we'll click on the button, and we'll do the same on there. We'll change the color of this to our nice light green. We'll just change the text on there. Colors are okay. So we'll just edit the text, and we'll make sure that's overpass as well. Okay, so we've configured those kinds of things. We could make a bit of space above if we wanted to, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. Okay, so we're going to say now that our page is all pretty much set up. The next thing we need to do is drop in the link through to whatever email service provider we're going to be using, because obviously we want someone to sign up to this. We want to send those over to our mailing list, get them subscribed, put it to a specific list if we want to segment things. Then we can send those out information as well as their free sample, and we've got them on our mailing list. We can then set up any kind of mailing shot system that we want, sending things out at a set sort of date and time based upon when they've subscribed. So the next stage is to link this up to our mail provider. Now Brizy Cloud has a lot of integrations, so obviously you need to make sure that your supported option or your preferred option is supported. We're going to be using MailerLite because I just tend to find that while MailChimp is good and it gives you slightly more subscribers, the interface and the way that MailerLite simply works is a lot more user-friendly, especially if you're new to this kind of thing and you like that drag and drop environment to create your mail shots and those kinds of things. I really like MailerLite, but you can use any one you want and the process is going to be fairly similar. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over, we're going to search for MailerLite inside Google, and from there we're going to create an account. So we're going to click to go over to the site. Now, it'll give you information about the pricing underneath. You get up to 1,000 subscribers with 12,000 email shot a month for free. After that then, or if you want to use all of their options, it starts at $10 a month. So it's not too bad. And as you grow in your list, this is quite a nice cost-effective way of working. Up to 2,500 is still only $15, which is probably about 12 euros or 12 pounds. So not too bad at all. So I'm going to start off by creating a new account for demo purposes, and then I'll show you how we can link things through, create your first list, and link that through via the API to Brizy itself. So I'm going to hit sign up, going to fill out my details, and then I'll come back to you once we've logged in and confirmed everything. So once you sign up for your MailerLite account, there's a couple of things you have to do. Your registration is the first thing. Then you can update your profile, and then finally you can request approval, which will send an approval email through to the account that you've associated with your MailerLite account. So I'm going to quickly go and do that. Then we can take a look at the next stage where we go through and link everything up, create our first list, grab the API field, and all those kinds of cool things. Okay, so my account is now approved and we're ready to move on. So I'm going to go to the subscriber section, and from there you can see we can add subscribers. So if you had an existing list, you could add that inside here. If you intend to run multiple different campaigns or different sources to sort of generate your email list, then you can deal with segments and you can deal with groups. So if you come into segments, you can create your first segment and see they're dynamic lists of customers based upon their attributes and their behaviors. Groups, on the other hand, is a way of being able to group multiple different subscribers together. So you may be running a competition, you may have a competition sort of group. You may be having a subscribe for a free giveaway. That could be a different group. It's up to you how you segment, how you group things, all those kinds of useful things. So I'm not going to worry about that. If you'd like to have a full detailed tutorial of how to use MailerLite, drop a comment in this comment section below and just let me know you'd like me to take a look at creating something to give you an overview of how you could start to use this. And if enough people want it, I'll create some content based upon it for you. Okay, so we've got the basics in place. You can see we've got our initial group created, which is the WP test, which is what I've set up as. So the next thing we need to do is grab that API key so we can link that through now into our Brizy Cloud account and associate that with our form element. Now to grab your API is very simple when it comes to MailerLite. All we need to do is come up to your account in the top right hand corner, expand that out, we're going to come down to integrations. Open that up. And inside there, you can see we've got some options that we can use if we have something like Shopify, WooCommerce. We can use the default built-in integration in there. We can also use it with WordPress. However, we want the developer API. I'm going to click on Use. That's going to give us our dedicated API key. And this is unique to our account and everything else that goes with our account. So all we need to do is copy that. Once that's copied, we can then move back over to our Brizy Cloud into the page that has the sign up forms, and we can use it and link that through inside there. So let's just take a look at doing that next. Now, when you want to link up any kind of form when it comes to Brizy, that's Brizy or Brizy Cloud, they both work the same, you have to select the button element. If you just select the selection, the form element, whatever, you don't actually have access to change these settings. So if we click on the button, you can see we get this little plug icon, and that allows us to then link it up to either just send it as a normal email or link it through to the service provider we're going to use. So we'll click on that. You can see email is the first option. However, we want to use the apps option. And inside there are all of the different associations that we can link this through to without any kind of problem. All nice integration. So your MailChimp's in there, Campaign Monitor, ConvertKit, and those kinds of things. MailerLite is also in there. So we're going to click on MailerLite. It says, right, API is required. It says click inside there. Let's paste in our API key and let's click on connect. That's then going to go and take a look to make sure that API key is fully working, associated with the correct account, and then allows us to do the next thing. So you can see, select account. This is the account we're going to be using. We're going to say continue to move on to our lists. So if we created groups, multiple lists and so on, all of our different lists will be associated inside here. We could create a new list from directly inside Brizy Cloud, or we can choose one that's already set up and created. We're going to choose the WP test option. Click on continue. That's going to take us through to the fields. So if you had a list that has multiple fields, you may have forename, you might have surname, you might have business, telephone number, all those kinds of things. You can associate those with the relevant fields that you want to associate in Brizy and also over into MailerLite. I haven't set any of those up. I've simply kept this super simple, and we've just got the email field inside there. So you can see if we click to open up MailerLite fields, we've got things like name, last name, company, and so on. These are automatically created for you. However, email is the only one that we've got, so we're going to leave that set as it is. If you want to have some kind of personalization, it's good to have a sign-up form that has the name and the email address. But there's one thing to note. Generally, less people will subscribe, the more they have to fill out. So keep it as simple as possible. If you don't need to have their first name, then don't worry about it. Just have the email address. If you want to add a level of personalization, then take a look at doing that, because that will give you that extra functionality. Anyway, email is what we want. So we're going to say continue on there. That's now going to say that's been done. You've successfully connected your form to MailerLite. So we're going to hit done on there. And now all we need to do is scroll down to any other form that we have. In this case, we've got one extra form. Click on that button again. Click on the little plug icon over to apps, into MailerLite. Choose our account, connect. Choose our list, continue. Fields, that's the only one that's in there. Continue again. That's going to confirm it, and we are done. So we've now linked that through to our newly created MailerLite account. So anybody that uses these forms will automatically get added into our list. Now bear in mind there's one other thing you need to make sure you do, and that is ensure that you have double opt-in enabled inside MailerLite. If you don't have it automatically set up, make sure you have that inside there. Now if you don't know where that is, all you need to do is log into your MailerLite account, come to your settings in the top corner, come down to subscribe settings, and in there you'll have a checkbox that says double opt-in for API and integrations. Set that to be on, and then you can configure any confirmation emails, opt-in emails, and so on from the details below. It is pretty simple and straightforward, but make sure you do that to just comply with those rules and regulations to avoid getting pulled up and having your email account shut down or your MailerLite account shut down for spamming people. Okay? So now we're on the home straight. We've covered most of the bases. Let's take a look now. We need to publish this page. We'd obviously have to go through and check that it all looks good on the different kinds of devices. So let's just take a look. So we jump over to tablet view. So we see this is what it's going to look like on a tablet. And one of the benefits of using one of the predefined sort of blocks and so on to build this out and just changing styles and images, most of that work's been done for you. So if you want to rapidly create landing pages and so on without spending hours messing around, fine-tuning and tweaking, that's a great way of doing it. Okay, so it doesn't look too bad on tablets. There's a couple of little tweaks I would probably make on there, change the size of some of the text and so on, but it's a good start. Onto mobile, and again, we're looking pretty good. Our button's looking a bit weird there, so we would want to change that. So we can just come to our text, for example. We could change the size of that, drop that down a little bit, come into our settings, and if we wanted to adjust things on this, we could make that a little larger, and then we could come onto this and make it a bit smaller, just to make sure that everything fits and lines up nicely. We could do just that. So we're just fine-tuning and tweaking to make sure that our mobile users get a great experience the same as our normal users do. So with all those checks in place and any tweaking done, all we need to do now is click on publish. That will now publish this to a temporary domain, which we could test this out then in our browsers to make sure that everything works fine, check it on mobiles, test out our subscription form, make sure that links through to our MailerLite or whatever service provider you're chosen.
making sure all that's done before we're ready to actually push this to the live options. So what live options do we have? Let's go back to our dashboard. There's our project, as we've already seen, our veggie smoothie. There's our temporary location. So if we click to open that up, we can see we can just go and take a look at our site. So this is what it's going to look like directly inside our browser as a preview, and everything looks looking pretty sweet inside there. All our subscribes and everything are all in place. So we come back over now, we can click in this top right hand corner with the 3 little dots, click on there, and we can choose publish. So we hit publish. This will take us over now to how do you want to publish your page. As I said back at the beginning when I was telling you why I've chosen Brizy Cloud, these are the reasons why. We've got custom domain, so if we wanted to use a custom domain for this, we could easily associate it with that. Choosing it will take you through the process of linking that up, choosing the domain, telling you what you need to set up inside your domain management for the IP and all those kinds of things. Subdomain is a subdomain of a Brizy site, for example, or your own custom domain. You can use that if you want to. Server Sync pushes it over to a different location, so you can host this yourself, and then you can have that link between the two, or you can export the HTML. Now, there's no real need for me to take you through all of these because whichever one you choose is going to have different options available. I've covered the export HTML and Server Sync in their own videos, but again, if you want to see each one of these and you want me to take you through each option, whether securely hosted by Brizy Cloud or self-hosted yourself, let me know in the comment section below and I'll create content on how we can publish our content directly from Brizy Cloud. But whichever one you choose, instructions are given to you exactly what to do. It's pretty painless. But what you should have seen through this entire process is how I would generally approach a client's project. We've created custom graphics, we've created product mockups, we put sites together by creating a custom header, including the image that we've created inside there. We've pulled in blocks from Brizy, created those, customized those, all the kinds of things that you would do on a pretty much daily basis. But this is a good starting point for get you up and running with your own custom landing pages using Brizy Cloud, using MailerLite, using Affinity Photo. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. And anything else you want me to cover in more detail, please just drop a comment in the comment section below. And if enough people are interested, then I will take a look at creating more content on those specifics for you.
Now, once you work through the sections in this video, you may want to take a look at the previous video I released recently on building a full website with e-commerce, custom graphics, hosting setup, as well as some custom design sections with advanced custom fields. You can check those out by taking a look at these links right now. Now, all the applicable links for everything I've covered are in the description below. My name has been Paul C. This has been WP Tuts. Until next time, take care.